Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We've got some things to discuss. Ack posted on his blog some rumor stuff, so I'm sure once he pops in, we'll start talking about that. But we start, as always, with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, so I watched the movie Air recently. I don't know if you saw that yet.
I saw it a couple weeks ago.
And I won't give away all of it, but obviously it's a story so it's not like
There's nothing to give away.
I mean, there's a few things you'll learn, but I thought it was a decent job, well acted.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting because they really wanted to highlight the deals that were going to be offered to nobodies, like Mel Turpin, and I remember Mel Turpin as a player, and some of the other names, and that's always fun. It's always fun to look back on even the NBA draft and see what's gone well, what's failed.
Sam Bowie and
yeah, like John Stockton. I wasn't even aware of him in that draft, and I won't give away the little punchline for that, but that was funny. And so, had Nike offered John Stockton a contract, it wouldn't have done as well because people took years to know who John Stockton was.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to say he was the wrong. He was Caucasian, so that was the reason. That was one of the reasons.
Yeah.
So
it worked out, in an interesting way. You got to see Ben Affleck again with his buddy, and
he directed the movie.
Oh, Ben Affleck did direct it. Mm-hmm. Okay, I knew it was his company, but I didn't know if he directed it.
Yeah, he directed it. Yeah,
it had some good hair on it, and
him as Phil Knight was interesting.
And Matt Damon's always good. He was good in it. He had a very good part as the guy who was trying to cut the deal. The
Sonny Vaccaro,
yeah. I feel like the sneaker guy who invented the logo did not get paid well enough. I feel like I know he had a job for life, but I feel like with that logo that he created, I don't want to say he got screwed, Mike, but I mean, who did get screwed? The person who invented the Nike swoosh. We learned that.
Yeah.
That person got screwed because that person was paid a pittance.
Right, but the thing was, it wasn't anything until Nike made it something.
I know. And maybe that person made something after it saying, "Hey, I invented the Nike swoosh," maybe.
Yeah, it's like the singer for the famous Pink Floyd song from Dark Side of the Moon, Great Gig in the Sky. It was a female singer named Claire Torrey, and she does this great thing at the end of the song, and everybody knows her from that. But she just got paid scale for that. She was, she just got paid a little something, and she'll be immortalized forever for that. But it's it's like a footnote. That's what it is.
Yeah, but there were some great parts in it. I see that the chat room is saying rest in peace, superstar Billy Graham. Listen, there were a bunch of famous people that died in the last week. If I went over them, we would be a whole show.
Yeah.
So I'm not going over any of them. But I just wanted to say, go see the Air movie if you wanted to sort of relive the excitement of when Nike started. And you'll learn a lot about Adidas. I think they were slandering Adidas a little bit. They went too hard on the Nazi front because they've done a lot since then. I mean, if you went with I want to say this as a Jew, right?
Volkswagen.
If you wanted to persecute every German company that may have been associated with the Nazi regime back in the day in a very, even in a very slight way, like IKEA and all that, all those companies have gone way far away from that.
Well,
just to prove
my wife actually, works for a German company, and my wife's Jewish, and that company was involved in stuff that that were the gas chamber plans and stuff like that.
Yeah, IG Farb. No, but if
that's like your grandfather being involved in something.
If you want to go down the road, of NASA was associated with the Nazis because they got German scientists.
Right. But my point is, you can't be held responsible for it like your grandfather did. And and those companies all have done really especially Adidas actually has done really good things within the Jewish community. Actually,
same with Siemens. My wife works with. It's the same thing. It's they and they go out of their way. I mean, they really,
and that's what usually happens because they look at that past and you say, but I will tell you one thing that I did learn. I didn't know that the brothers who put together Adidas eventually split up, and one of them started Puma. Had no idea.
I didn't know that either.
So they were really, really an interesting pair. And Jesse Owens actually wore the shoes being worn by the guy who did create the original Adidas. So, and as a black guy going up against Hitler, I'm sure he knew who the owners were and everything and probably didn't feel that bad about it.
We can use this as a segue going into the start of the show. What does the NBA conference final and the NHL Eastern and Western Conference final have in common? Right now, Denver's up 3-0 on the Lakers. Miami's up 3-0 on the Celtics, and Vegas and Vegas and Florida are up 2-0. I mean, this could be potentially the worst conference finals in both sports in the history of the NBA and the NHL, because right now there's absolutely no drama. I mean, the NHL, all 4 games are in overtime, and I'm not saying that it's impossible that Dallas or Carolina can come back, because they can. I'm just saying that right now, if things are going the way that they're going, you're going to have 4 sweeps in the 4 conference finals, and that would suck. But okay, let's start.
We have seen the
conference
finals
hung up for a minute, so hold on.
Oh yeah, the conference finals has tended to be this way a little bit in the past. Like, I don't know why, but it seems to be the least interesting of the playoffs.
Because these teams they're beaten to a pulp act because of the stupid divisional playoff format. That's why.
No, it's divisional playoffs. I mean,
I think it definitely is.
I mean, they're going to be you put these 8 teams from each conference in any which way, they would have beat each other up. I mean, all 8 teams are good. All 8 teams are solid. Look at, I mean, Florida's the 8th team, and they're running the table. So it's like, I mean, all these teams are good. So it's like, doesn't really matter, like the conference final, whatever, I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you, but it's just like, I think that we got to the point where when you have 32 teams in the league and half the league isn't making the playoffs, the half that does make the playoffs are good teams. They're all good teams. It was different than when we had like 24 teams and 16 made the playoffs, It was a very different world. But now we have completely, like, we've really run into a world where everybody's good. All these teams are good, and you're seeing it for sure. And there's I just noticed for some reason I think there's an emotional drop off a little bit in this round for some reason every year. I don't know what it is. It seems like the first round, the second round, and the third round all drop a little bit, and then the Stanley Cup final tends to have like a little bit more juice to it, but. That it says the Stanley Cup final after all.
Well, yeah, that's because you're one step away, and you'll basically empty the tank. You know that in 2 weeks you'll be on vacation, so you can completely. Right. But I mean, I just right now, and as soon as Russ gets back, we'll start talking about it. But right now, I mean, I haven't found, other than the third period, the last 5 minutes of the third period and overtime. I haven't found the 4 overtime game. I fell asleep in the third overtime, so I can't attest to the excitement. It was late, and I can't attest to the excitement. But the last few minutes of the third period and overtime in game 2 against Florida, Carolina, and in the Vegas Dallas games, that's been exciting. But really, I mean, there's not been a lot to be excited about. But we can talk about it once we start.
That now. Okay, here we go. Let's start here. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, May 22nd, 2022. 3.
I'm Michael Agello, and I am dressed like the man in black, Johnny Cash.
There you go.
And I'm Russ Cohen. It's all of it.
And I'm Eklund. And you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And now, hockey now, which is played in quarters, not periods.
Hi. Yeah.
Every game is at least 4 periods now, if not more. And and the funny thing about Johnny Cash, okay, the famous recording they did from the Fulton County Prison. That's like the famous record of his.
Yeah.
Johnny Cash from Fulton County Prison. That was recorded the day I was born. Isn't that cool? That's kind of cool. It's pretty funny. So when I was watching the country music special, it's like January 12th, 1968. That was recorded the day I was born. Pretty crazy.
Wow.
Anyway, so here we go. We're going to get it now. We have the fact that we have had, I think, Mike, actually we've had 4 good games. Like we've had 4 overtime games, which is a first. That's never happened before in this conference final. And it's hard to imagine that we won't see more overtime games because these games are tight.
They're tight. They're suspenseful, but are they? I don't know. I mean, there's something. They're just not. They're not standing out to me as like classic, exciting playoff games.
I'll say this: I don't think the Vegas Dallas games have stood out to me that way.
Yeah.
Although they buried that game yesterday. Like I turned it on late. The way that was sort of shameful, the way ESPN put that game, a prominent game like that on at like 3:00. Like, what are you doing?
Okay, because this is the thing, and I will harp on this till my dying day. Because first, Edmonton, Vegas at what was it? 11 p.m.
Yeah. 11.
Okay. Why? Because it conflicted with the NBA, or because, not conflicted with the NBA, because of Sunday night baseball. It couldn't conflict with Sunday night baseball. Okay, so that now you're playing a game at 3 p.m. on a Sunday, burying it. Why? Because Miami-Boston was on Sunday night. The NHL should have read the landscape when we talked about this before they signed the deal with ESPN, that they were going to be treated as the redheaded stepchild. And a year into the damn contract, what are they doing? They're getting secondhand bullcrap.
Anyhow, back to the game.
Well, I think part of that, we'll get that. But back to the game. Part of that, Mike, is the fact I think that you are looking at not exactly. And I think that's playing into it. But Miami, Boston, that's a much bigger. Basketball's bigger than hockey anyway. But that's a much bigger. I'm not saying that we can change that anyway. But let's talk about the games.
As far as the game, like I said, I felt like the Florida series has been much more suspenseful. It may not be the most exciting play. Neither of them may not be the most exciting play. But I feel like in the Florida series, we're seeing more, and that for me is good. What Matt Tkachuk's doing is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And really could go down as an all-time performance if he keeps going through right until the Cup, scoring all these overtime winners. I think we can't ignore that.
I love the thing that he's done, like of skating off the ice. Like that is like
like he's robbed something.
Like and the first time he did it, I thought to myself, it was done because of the disallowed goal where they all celebrated. And the second, when he scores that goal at the end of the fourth overtime, I tweeted out there, it was really close to offsides, and that goal could have been called back. And I was really surprised that it wasn't reviewed. If you look at my picture, I never saw an actual really good angle on it because they didn't show an angle, but I did a slow motion tweet where I slow motioned it back and forth, and he was right on the edge, and you can't really tell. From the angle that whether or not it was offside. And I thought in his mind, when I saw him do that, I'm like thinking to myself, he's probably thinking, maybe that's going to get reviewed too. So let's get out of here. Like they just got.
No, I don't think it's the review. I think this is just Matthew Tkachuk being sort of trollish, and I'm waiting now for the announcer to say Matthew Tkachuk has left the building, because that's basically what it is.
Entertaining, like he.
Yeah, it's fine.
He's right by the edge.
He's looking up on the screen. He wants to see his hit. He's smiling. Like he's the devil, and everybody knows that.
And it's a wonderful thing, personality-wise. And it does so much for a team like the Florida Panthers, and does so much for hockey in general. To have he's probably the most entertaining thing left right now in the league.
He is.
And that's something. I think Mark Stone is also incredibly entertaining always still, and he brings a lot to it. But what Tkachuk's doing is just. It's just nuts. It's just nuts. And that last game, it looked like Carolina was going to run away with it in the first period. In the game 2, they came out flying, and Carolina doesn't have a lot of snipers. And the reality is that it's easier to beat Bob with snipers than without snipers. I think that they're running it because Bob does leave openings. He does. He's not a big goalie with his angles and stuff like that. Yeah, you can go high with him if you're good. If you're an accurate enough shooter, you can definitely beat him.
But here's the issue. The thing is that we've said all playoffs that Carolina's issue has been their lack of scoring, but they haven't come up against an opponent in the first 2 rounds. I mean, first the Islanders were more flawed than they were in terms of lack of offense. based on, how they were built and what they spent their money on. And New Jersey is a young team I think that will grow into a team that can score a lot of goals. But it was just like a year too soon for the Devils. I have a lot of respect for the talent level. But here now they're coming up against Florida, the hottest team in the league, that has gone through Boston, that has gone through Toronto, that is on an emotional high. They have a ton of confidence, and they have the best performing goaltender of the 4 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, but here's what I want to say about Carolina. We're at the point, again, we were worried about the scoring because they made attempts in the offseason, but they also bought like damaged merchandise. And anytime you buy damaged merchandise, you get it cheaper, and you don't know when you bring it home how long that's going to work. We've all bought stuff like that. So that's always a gamble. But what's also coming through again is their lack of goaltending. Because now they're flip-flopping their goaltending again. And now this is like year 3, Eck, and it's like, I get it. If you
didn't fully understand pulling Anderson after that performance. I mean, he wasn't bad.
I know. And if they wanted to give him a rest, it makes no sense because they didn't give Bob a rest. And if they didn't want Kochekov because Brind'Amour did younger goalie, okay. But at some point, somebody has to make a real good goalie decision there, or they're going to blow their window and never win.
Are we going to see Kochekov in Game 3? I'm curious. Like I am.
No, they said it's Ronta.
No, Anderson.
Sorry, not Anderson.
Yeah, Anderson was the first guy off the ice.
Yeah, it's Anderson. We're not going to see Kochekov. For whatever reason, they have panned him now for this series. And it's like, okay, but at some point, you have to look at this and say, when you get in the room at the end of the year, goaltending lets us down and scoring lets them down. And they're not going to have that defense forever. They're not. Remember, the Rangers defense was unbelievable until it wasn't. And guys like Girardi and McDonough started to wear down. Then McDonough got a second life after that. But once you get 2 or 3 guys wearing down, that's it.
It's in a window here. We're definitely in a window, Press. And it's like it would be a shame to blow this window when you have a chance. Like they have a real opportunity here. And
it's ironic that Carolina has not been getting slagged by the hockey media for their approach to goaltending, which is, Freddie Anderson, who failed in Toronto, spending a couple $1 million on Ronta, as Toronto did, because Toronto.
That's a fair point.
It's the same thing. Now, their defense is better, so you can cover up mediocre goaltending better, but still, they have not invested in a top. Now, maybe Kochetkov is going to be that goaltender, Russ. I think it's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah. But right now he's not, and right now they're wasting the window of guys like Jordan Staal and Brent Burns, who are in their mid to late 30s. Those guys have a limited window. So really, I mean, I think it's imperative. Like if they fall short against Florida, it's imperative to Don Waddell to go out and trade for a goaltender, because honestly, if they're a good goalie away, if they had Sorokin, they'd win the Stanley Cup. I'm convinced of it.
Maybe. I mean, they would have a better shot for sure. They still don't have a really great offense. So at the end of the day, they still
but their offense got hurt this year by losing Pacioretty, losing Svechnikov to the ACL injury, Teravainen getting a broken hand. Those things. Yeah. They lost 2 legitimate 25 to 30 goal scorers, and that's going to kill any team.
Especially like that's been an absolute killer for them.
Right. I can't blame them for that. You can't predict it.
I'm not going to blame him for that at all. But I would, knowing Brind'Amour, I wouldn't think he would be afraid of playing a rookie goalie. But at the same time, I think that he might be looking at, he must know something. I mean, the guy's with him. He's practicing with him. Kochekov, he's with him. So the question is, if he's with him, maybe Brind'Amour just sees that he's just too young for this or something, or he just sees something that he just doesn't think.
He thinks that. I think that's the issue.
Right.
Rob Brind'Amour, and I'm not saying, Kochekov is Cam Ward this year, but Rob Brind'Amour should have learned from Cam Ward that at some point, it's okay to make that switch and hope for the best, because you already know the 2 you got. And Timothy had said, hey, Anderson played well in the first game. He did. That's fine. But Anderson has a track record of not winning. And for some reason, they didn't want to play him the next game. So
it's really weird they didn't play him in game 2. I thought that was a real, that felt panicky to me very early in the series. You should give your goalie who went, he went 4 periods shutting out the team, basically shutting out Florida for over 4 periods. You should give him a shot in the next game. It's it definitely wasn't his fault. The goal wasn't his fault. I mean, for crying out loud, it was a beautiful shot. It was a perfect goal. I mean, I don't know, both goals in overtime by Florida were perfect goals. I mean, like,
Yeah.
and you feel bad that the second one ends on a power play. That but it is one of those like karma things where the Panthers were eliminated when Tampa scored on the power play 2 seasons ago in overtime.
Carolina is not the aggressor in overtime. They're not, because
no, they're not,
and that's a problem for them now.
And they definitely are taking a lot of far out shots. A lot of like they're not getting it in too tight. The shot totals I think are very deceptive. And I feel like when I watch the game too, I'm like the shot totals. I've never seen them. I don't know, this might be a small thing, but when you're watching the game and a team takes a shot, you look up at the shot clock and you usually see it change pretty quickly. Have you noticed how long it takes in this? For some reason, I don't know what that is, but it's like it's taking forever for them to update a shot. Sometimes like up 30 seconds to a minute later, you see that shot that was taken a minute ago updated.
I can't remember what game it was. I think it was the first game of Florida Carolina where they had the shots on goal for one team at like 10-2, and then all of a sudden you looked like at 3 minutes later and it was like 6-2. They had clicked too many shots and then they rolled it back as the game was going along.
I think the shot totals are really deceptive. I mean, and the quality shots are definitely. The Carolina's not taking a lot of quality shots. They really aren't. I mean, Bob's not making incredible saves. He made the waffle save he made in the first period of last game was incredible. That was going across was an amazing save. But and he's also doing what Bob does really well. And I talked about this many over the years. But Bob is great at freezing the puck and stopping momentum. Like he knows when to do that. Where Ranta and Anderson are quick to play the puck into the corner, when they have a chance. Bob just will let everything settle down. He's really good at and that is something, especially when we're on the road, is really important, I think, because he just it gets the fans a little bit out of it. It gets the fans, he might go to a commercial break, or he might, the fans are rocking and the team's rocking, and Bob will just freeze it all the time.
The only thing I want to discourage the chat room from saying is calling Bob the hot goalie. I don't think he's the hot goalie. Bob has been really good ever since Spencer Knight went out, and he's had to lead the team. He's been good. He's not the hot goalie like coming into the playoffs. He led their team this entire season to get them even to the playoffs. That was another reason when I saw Bob sort of getting back to Vezina Bob that I kept rolling with Florida, because I've seen this guy before.
But then he got sick, and Lyon stepped in,
and Lyon had to step in. Yeah,
right.
But it wasn't his play that got Lyon in there. You have to remember that. And he is, for all the money that they spend on him and all the craziness you say, like he is a 2-time Vezina trophy winner. He is a legitimate. Now he's still. I think it's okay to still call him a hot goalie, because I think he is.
Well, they're saying like Binnington was the hot goalie. No. But
no, this is a
situation.
This is a good goalie. This is a good hot goalie. Like this is a really quality goalie who's hot.
This is not Andrew Hammond. This is not.
This is a guy who. And it's all about so many things with Bobrovsky, but like I can't stress enough, like that time management thing is such a small thing, but no one ever really seems to talk about it. But he's been doing it ever since he was with the Flyers. I noticed this about him, that he's really good at that, and it definitely plays. The Panthers end up with a lot of offensive, defensive zone faceoffs, but it's worth it for what they do in that way.
And
so I don't know.
And the chat room's mentioning Puljujarvi. State or Survival did. Puljujarvi, you don't even notice him. I told you I thought he was just a depth guy. I'm surprised they've been using him, to be honest.
He really is invisible. I mean, I thought he would go in there and have and be more prominent with Kotkaniemi and all that, but he really is. I don't. Puljujarvi's a tough one, because I've seen him look really good. We've seen him look really good at Edmonton. I don't know. It's a strange situation. I really do. I mean,
he's just a floater. I think he's too much of a floater.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, the Conn Smythe right now, someone says in the room that Bob keeps playing like this. He's got a definite shot at the Conn Smythe, although
he's got a shot at it.
Kachuk is the one who really think would maybe get the vote, because I think it's just because of everything. The show.
He'll take the Conn Smythe trophy and leave the ice quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be leaving the ice quickly in Florida if they win in overtime.
No.
It'll be a different scene. So the funny thing is just. The fact that Carolina is one of those weird arenas where you have to walk across the ice to get to the room also plays into this thing too, because he scores goals right next to the door. Both these goals he scored, he's been like right next to the door out, so it's kind of crazy. I think that if something now feels like Florida's world and everybody's playing in it, it's like he can't do anything wrong. But here's if you want Carolina to have some hope, here's the hope. Florida hasn't been that great at home. Even though they've been unbelievable on the road in the playoffs, at home they haven't been all that great. They're like 500 at home. So, but they're like 6-0 on the road the last 6 games, whatever it is. So, yeah, I think that this is I think that this series could get right back into this. We're looking at overtime games, like anything can happen still. But I think it's been pretty good. I think we need to talk about the Dubas situation because
let's talk about it.
It keeps getting more and more fascinating as it goes along. Mike, what's your take on the whole thing? I mean, I know you probably have talked about it, but I want to hear. I haven't been on the show with you guys yet. I really want to get your take on this, on how this played out.
Well, I mean, we could do an entire show on how it unfolded in Toronto, and like I wrote today about, really the details of how it fell apart.
Right, that's what I kind of wanted to talk about.
At this point, and we'll talk about it because it's interesting. But at this point, the organization really has to look forward and has to get a general manager in place because they're 5 weeks away from the NHL draft and free agency, and they've got players that they have to make decisions on. Yeah. But honestly, like I said, I was sitting 10 feet away from Kyle Dubas when he had the media availability around this time last Monday. Mm-hmm. And at that point, and from everything that's been reported by, good reporters like Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnston and Pierre LeBrun, the admission that the job was taking a toll on his family and that he had to check with them was an admission that gave the organization pause and gave them to say, is this guy up for the job? Now, maybe that's not fair, but I think it's realistic. And the thing is they had apparently an agreement in place. They had an agreement in place. And on Thursday, Dubas's agent submitted a different proposal with increased. Now, I've been told it was not the money. It was not the money increase that was the problem. It was the streamlining of the process in terms of how things were done. And this is the thing. You could assume that the stress on his family and the stress on him was having to deal with a bureaucracy involving MLS&E, where you have to go to Shanahan, then you have to go to the board, then the board goes back to Shanahan, then it goes back to Dubas. It's like it's virtually impossible to deal with that kind of bureaucracy and be able to make the moves that you think that you need to make. And that's probably what he wanted to get streamlined, because there's going to be decisions in the next 5 weeks that are going to affect the future of the Leaf franchise. Right. And, some of those things he probably just didn't want to deal with the stuff that he had to deal with before.
One of them, because, I thought about this after, and, I had to take that Dubas being as close to Sheldon Keefe as he was, he didn't want to fire him. Well, if he had sent that new proposal to MLS&E and he'd have gotten more autonomy, and if he, let's say, had the say-so on firing of the coach, he wouldn't have fired Sheldon Keefe.
Right. Well, you can go a step further, Russ. You could say if he had the autonomy, maybe he doesn't trade any of the core four. And that's
right.
That's where I think that they wanted, because maybe Shanahan recognized that the changes needed to be made, and maybe there was some hesitancy upon Dubas. But, Dubas said in the media availability that essentially I'm open to anything now, because I would take him at his word that means he recognized that the current setup would not work. He
didn't like how long they held him at bay about this. Like, I think that also the feeling like, he had such a good regular season. I think that,
but that wasn't that wasn't Shanahan.
No, it doesn't matter who it was, but it just, I know. But Dubas, I think you're like,
sure,
even that I'm a good general manager.
Right. And then basically they were holding his feet to the fire. They were saying, like, making him sing for supper, all those little analogies. But he did, and he had they had a great regular season, and they won a round in the playoffs. And apparently at that point, everybody was on board. I was told that it was one of the corporate entities that said, no, well, let's not give him a contract. It was Tannenbaum was in favor, Shanahan was in favor. but one of the, either TSN or Sportsnet, that part of the MLS board said no, said let's let it play out and let's see. So then in March they were on board with signing him to an extension, and the negotiations went on from there. Where it fell apart apparently was this message from his agent the Thursday before, last Thursday, where he wanted to streamline things and where he apparently asked for. Now, so the interesting theory is that some people out there were saying, okay, if they were going to make him come back under the same rules, then he made that offer out there to basically get fired, or to basically say, okay, that and I don't believe that. I think he wanted to be.
Anybody who saw him, and you saw him in person, Mike, but anybody who saw him in the press box, even during the games, knows that he had a general love for this job and this team, and he wanted this to work. I mean, this is not just general manager going through the motions. He wanted.
And on top of that, Eck, he's got everybody in that organization who he's brought in, and that's right. The upheaval in this organization is not going to stop with Jason Spezza and the Marlies coaching staff, which happened on Friday. Right. It's going to include Sheldon Keefe, who's probably going to get let go, but the new GM is going to have to do that. It's going to be Wes Clark and Ryan Hardy and Haley Wickenheim. I mean, I would hope some of them stay, but maybe they will. Maybe they give them a boost in pay, but the new general manager is going to want to bring in his own people.
Well, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
A new general manager would always want to have a new coach and maybe one other advisor. A new general manager doesn't want to necessarily hire 5 new people, which he may have to do. And that's where I think Brendan Shanahan kind of didn't really think this through and acted with emotion. Because if that happens, and he maybe should have checked in with some of these people to see how they like their job first. Because once Spezza, went and basically, was telling you he's loyal to Dubas and he left, if I was on the board, I was like, I would be feeling like, they're all going to jump ship.
I mean, if Shanahan thought that the streamlining was cutting him out of the decision-making process, which I heard was not the case, but if he's thinking that was part of it, then he's thinking that he's going to be losing some gravitas in the organization, and that Dubas is trying to move into a more of a power position. And this was sort of like, apparently somebody mentioned, I think it was Elliot Friedman mentioned that a member of the MLS and the board commented on what was going on in the Leaf organization. He says it's like Game of Thrones, meaning like they're like all chopping heads and killing.
Well, there have been factions known for a long time, right? And that's something that's not like, it's not a secret that you have people around the Maple Leafs organization will talk to you, and I've talked to different ones, and there's definite factions, and there's some that say that this is definitely going to happen, and it doesn't happen. There's some that say this definitely won't happen, and it does happen. And there's definitely, Shanahan has his people and Dubas has his people, and although Shanahan and Dubas aren't necessarily at odds with each other, they still have their loyalists. They have their people who they believe in, and those are now going to come forward, because that's what's going to happen in a situation like this. That's why you saw Spezza happen.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be like this is it's going to be an ugly breakup. It has that feeling of that.
See, if I was Sheldon Keefe's agent, I would tell him to throw away his phone and get a new number.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that don't play into.
What does it matter, Russ?
It matters because I don't want to talk to them, because if they're going to fire me, I can't get a job this year. Even though I'm getting paid, that puts him at a disadvantage, because there's an awful lot of jobs available right now for a coach, and they're all going to pass him by the time this new GM comes in play and fires him. And I'd be mad.
I heard a report that there might be interest with him in with the Rangers.
Well, I haven't heard anything like that, and it's hard to have interest in a guy when you don't know for sure if he's fired yet. And I can tell you that Dolan's not going to wait to see what happens with Sheldon Keefe and tell Chris Drury, hold on, don't worry.
People aren't nearly as strong on Sheldon Keefe around the NHL as they are on Dubas. Like that's there's a very big difference there. There's
the one thing that would give me pause about all the rumors about Pittsburgh with Dubas is the fact that Mike Sullivan is firmly entrenched as the coach there. And if he's firmly entrenched as the coach, now,
it doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, like, let's go to Florida, for example. Bill Zito comes in, and Joel Quenneville is firmly entrenched as coach there. So here's a new general manager that comes in.
Yeah, but could you foresee him losing his job because of Kyle Beach? You couldn't. That was
you didn't foresee that. But what I'm saying is, not always does the general manager get to hire a new coach. Like that doesn't always happen. But in Philadelphia, it's not going to happen with Briere and Tortorella either.
Right. It's not, and it's not going to happen in Pittsburgh. Whoever takes the job, Sullivan's going to be the coach.
But Sullivan is a proven coach. He's not. It's not. And Sullivan definitely has the. He has Crosby and all those people are Team Sullivan. Like Sullivan's a part of. It's Malkin, Crosby, Letang, and Sullivan. They really the four. The four of them are set together. They are wrapped together, and there's no way of getting around that. Right. That's the reality of that situation. Right. So. But Dubas, I don't think you can underplay like what Larry Brooks was saying a little while ago in this whole scenario, because I think he was right on. I think he definitely had an inside scoop on this, and I think that he also knew
maybe
that
for him being in the front office, but there's no way Dubas is firing Sullivan.
Not firing yet, but just the fact that Dubas being aware that other teams are interested in him gives him the ability to increase his demands.
Sure.
And I think that you can't downplay that factor.
I mean, they might give him a dual position, right, like the Flyers gave Fletcher, but I mean, they might do that. But again, he would have to.
But in Pittsburgh, he wouldn't have the authority to fire Sullivan.
But he'd have everything else. He could do everything else.
Pittsburgh is a tough job to take.
And my apologies to all the Pittsburgh fans, but honestly, if I was a GM candidate out there, I don't know if I'd want to take that job, simply because you have a 35-year-old Sidney Crosby, a 34 or 35-year-old Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang. It's the team has feet of clay. Yeah. And now there's
Mike, if you know it's your last job, then you could take the Pittsburgh job and try and hit a home run. I get it, but you're right. Otherwise, yeah.
I don't know. Right. I mean, I think that you have those guys, but you also have a salary cap going up, and you have a lot of guys coming off contract. There are going to be those three players are definitely solidified, but there are going to be spots to make some situations.
All right, so wait, let's talk about that for a minute. You said we know the salary cap's going up. I'm just going to tell you, based on the way the world is and how the world is expecting the economy to crash again, that this whole thing about the cap going up, I'll believe it when I see it. Because when real money is actually changing hands and they actually look at this season after the RSN collapse and how that, I don't know if the cap's going up as much as everybody thinks. I don't think so.
It's not going up as much next year.
Oh, definitely not next year, but even the year after, Mike.
After what Bettman said, and then all of a sudden you had that correction with the Bally's, going under, not sort of going under, actually going under. But, everybody expects it to be around 90 million in a couple years. But yeah, there are things. I mean, hell, the world economy could completely collapse if the debt ceiling situation doesn't get straightened out. So
so that's what I'm saying. We can't count on this 90 million in conversations. At least I don't.
And I have to comment on this because I saw this posted this morning on Twitter, and I just found it absolutely laughable. From Stan Fischler, who currently writes for the Hockey News, regarding the problems in Toronto might have been avoided had they kept Lou Lamoriello on as general manager. And I mean, I have never heard a bigger load of crap in my friggin' life, because the problems started with Lou.
I can't imagine anybody laughing harder at that than Lou Lamoriello himself, Mike, honestly.
I mean, all you have to do is
I'm sure if Lou read that article, he would laugh at it as well.
Lou would enjoy that article. He would.
He'd definitely enjoy that article for what it is. And he knows that's absolutely the most ridiculous thing on the planet.
And let me just explain briefly what I'm talking about, because Lou left in 2018, or they decided to move on from Lou in favor of Kyle Dubas. Dubas was getting feelers. Colorado wanted to hire him as their GM. Sakic asked for permission. The Leafs denied it because they had Dubas on track to be general manager. Why was Lou partially responsible for what happened there? Because Lou had the opportunity to sign William Nylander to an extension a year out before his the third year of his ELC, and because it was Lou's policy not to negotiate with players until their deals expired, he waited until Nylander, I think, had like 65 or 66 points, and then there was the long holdout, and then he leaves Kyle Dubas with this load of crap. And Dubas, I think mistakenly as a young GM, succumbed to Nylander's demands at the 11th hour and gave him a contract which I didn't think he deserved. They should have traded him, but that went down. That continued the road down with Nylander. After Nylander, with Matthews and with Marner, they all got what they wanted. They all got less term. They all got big money, and that was all because Lou set the precedent.
Right.
All because Lou set the precedent.
Oh yeah. There's no question. I mean, that's just, that's so crazy absurd to think about.
And Chris in the chat, please, would you shut up about Garth Snow? He mentioned Garth Snow as Elliot Friedman mentioned about 20 names. 20.
I would say this in a
Mike
list.
Ellis. Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say in a list of 20, I put Garth like 18. Honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, listen. I mean, it is not going to be easy to find a general manager who's going to be better, than Dubas in this situation, because it is a really hard situation. It's not a fun situation to be in. It's definitely a team with tons of pressure. But there are people who love pressure too. It depends on the kind of general manager you get. You need to get somebody in there who just doesn't give a crap about it.
Well, and
go in there and do it.
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, immediately after Dubas was let go, the name Brad Treliving came up because Treliving was just walked away from Calgary.
Yeah.
The talk about Doug Armstrong's name got mentioned, and Doug Armstrong has a contract for 3 more years. Andy Strickland reported that there's not an out in his contract, and he's got 3 years left. Now that doesn't prevent the possibility of like the Leafs ownership going to the Blues and say, "Can we talk to him?" But
this is what they would do in that situation, because I've been doing a little research on that, because when I heard that name, I was wondering how that would work. And what you can do in that situation is, the Leafs have to offer him a job that is higher than his current position as well. So as long as usually the way these contracts are structured is teams cannot deny permission if another team offers a higher position. Now that doesn't necessarily, it's interesting how that works, but it could now, that's not always the case, but 99% of the contracts that people sign with teams, it's like if he's offered like the vice president plus the general manager job,
right,
or whatever, that's
and
something that
he's just the general manager in St. Louis.
Right. So he's just a general manager. Anything that is a higher step up in position.
So if they offered him VP of hockey operations, that would be a step up.
Right. And even though, it really hardly means anything in reality, because he's, any GM is basically is already the VP of hockey operations too. So, or president of hockey operations even.
Well, and we have to mention the Bowman-Quenneville pairing, because that's getting mentioned, and I really don't think that's the way they should go either, to be honest.
Well, I mean, but here's the reality, and this is what. Okay, is there a possibility after Gary Bettman clears Joel Quenneville that he is a candidate or a leading candidate for a job in the NHL, including Toronto? Sure, because he's got 3 Stanley Cups under his belt. The dynamic duo, and I'm using that in quotes, of Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville to a corporation like MLS&E, who is very careful in terms of a lot of the ongoing cultural issues in the world, where they are 2 people who are deeply involved in the Kyle Beach situation, to the point that both of them lost their jobs. I just can't see both of them being put in a position to be general manager and head coach of the Maple Leafs. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. I also don't, I've heard that combination in New York as well sometimes. So
that's not happening in New York.
I don't see anything like that either. I mean, Quenneville in New York is definitely a possibility, but
yeah, that's a possibility.
And in Toronto too.
But they already passed on him for now, so it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
In Toronto too, but not the both of them.
No.
That's a perfect storm of political incorrectness.
There you go. I thought it'd be fun to go through the rumor chart a little bit today, because I did update the whole thing, and we are getting to the point where, there's only 4 teams playing, so everybody else out there might be interested in what's going to happen in a few weeks, as we get closer to we're only a month or so away from the draft.
And then I did want to mention something at the end, about the draft.
Yeah.
And Flamester, put your comment in the chat about what you think about Treliving and Toronto. But let's go over the rumor chart. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go through it. I'm gonna bring up here on the thing. So here we go.
Russ would sign up for this one.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys on the podcast here a little glimpse into the rumor chart. The people that have to pay for the entire thing, but you guys get it for free because you're just here with us in the afternoon. So for a little bit, we're going to go through some of this stuff. But Nylander leads my chart off today,
okay.
And this.
I will preface this, Eck. I think everything is up in the air now because of the situation.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely is. But when I talk to somebody, until I hear that Nylander, the plan was definitely to move Nylander. That was known even before the playoffs started. And we didn't really talk about it that much. But I couldn't even talk about that much. But that was the plan. So until I hear that that's not the plan, I'm going to stay with the fact that is the plan because
fair. I think I told Mike off air. I felt like if Nylander goes, that's the team he's going to is the Kings.
Kings, yeah, they've always liked him. They
no.
Play for the Kings.
What's that?
Did his dad play for the Kings? I was trying to remember.
No, he did not.
Michael Nylander didn't play.
Calgary, New York Rangers, Washington.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't play. Did not play for LA.
Right. Seattle also has an interest for sure.
They need scoring. Well, okay. Here's the thing, and this is why LA would make a lot of sense. They have boatloads of young talent on their entry-level contracts, which is what I think the Leafs would be looking for. Now, I'm not, Russ, I'm not going to say they're going to get Brandt Clark for William Nylander because he's only got a year left in his contract. But any deal for Nylander would involve what they did with Fiala, which means an extension, talking to his agent before the trade is being made, and the Leafs getting the benefit. Now, for Fiala, they gave up Brock Faber, who is probably a top 4 defenseman now, and a first-round pick. If I'm the Leafs and whoever the general manager is, and I'm trading William Nylander, okay, I'm not asking for Brandt Clark. I might be asking for Quentin Byfield. I might be asking for one of those young, not cornerstones. They're not going to trade those guys, but I'm asking for a good quality young player.
Well, you might be able to get Helge Grans. He's just finished his second year. You might be able to get him and somebody else. He's a really good skating defenseman. His offense hasn't come around, but he has a lot of potential. Like if you got Helge Grans and Francesco Pinelli, something like that, I would make that deal.
I'm sorry. I'm talking Kaliev. I'm talking Byfield. I'm talking those guys.
Only get one more year with the guy. What do you think you're getting?
Anyway.
What did I just say about them talking to him about an extension?
But even in an extension, he's been too inconsistent to get that kind of thing. Like
they're not going to just fork over the money.
I mean, everybody's extolling the virtues of William Nylander as being a top level player, but then when you want to trade for him, you're giving him shit.
No, it's not that. I believe the same thing Eck does, and that is when he goes to that team, they're going to be happy to have him, and they're not just going to fork over the money. They're not.
They're going to see what he's about. I mean, honestly, they're going to, and everyone's going to need to see what he's about away from the Toronto machine because it's like that's another thing. He's been involved in that. Good or it might hurt him, it may help him. He may be better away from Toronto. He may be worse. It's a hard thing to judge at this point because he's played with good players in Toronto for sure. But who knows? Maybe he's going to be better if he gets to carry the puck up the ice more often. Who knows? I mean, it's like, but will he do that? Like his dad was the same way.
Exact same way.
People didn't know like which way to go in him, and he had people who were 100% that loved his dad and people that hated his dad. It's like it was really just like.
Well, you know why? Eck, I can tell you why. Watching him with the Rangers, Nylander's dad, Michael. You know when he was good? When he was with Yager. You know when he wasn't good? When he wasn't with Yager.
Yeah, right. He liked these skilled players. You got to play with skilled players. So when you look at that situation, Nylander has played with skilled players. That's like there's no question about that, right? So he is. So is he going to be a 40-goal scorer in another place? That's the question. Like, is he a 30-goal scorer?
That's just going to give him an extension, Mike. Just so you hope that the Leafs are going to get more in the trade. I don't believe that's going to happen.
I think that you're getting what you're getting. You're going to get players and you're going to get cap space, and that's what's going to happen. Cap space.
What I'm saying here is that I think Nylander is the equal or as good or better than Fiala, And if they're trading Nylander to the Kings, they would get a deal comparable to what Minnesota gave up for Fiala. And, Grands and what the other player that you mentioned, Russ.
Go look him up. He's a heck of a player.
I'm not saying he's not, but I'm saying that, Brock Faber was much more well-regarded than those players are. And they got a
not necessarily at the time, Mike. He still was in this mode where they weren't for what he was.
He became more than that, but
no, I'm just saying. I'm saying that's a non-starter. They would have to get one. They would have to get a young player. Turcotte or Kaliev or. I don't know. Bjornfoot hasn't really turned out.
Why do you want Kaliev?
Why would LA do that? Like, why would LA do that?
I don't understand why. Why do you want Kaliev? He's just a goal scorer. He's a one-dimensional goal scorer.
Because Russ, you're trading a 40-goal scorer.
I get it, but you don't want a one-dimensional guy in return. Nylander's not a one-dimensional guy.
Pretty much. He's improved a little defensively, but he's always been inconsistent.
But he still could be an assist guy too. Kaliev's not even that.
Well, right, but Russ, he is established as an NHLer.
Barely, but he is.
I don't want this whole show to just be Leaf based. So let's move on.
Thank you.
We'll see. We'll get to more of that, but I'm gonna go past Nick Bonino.
I was gonna say we could snore through that one.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen there totally, but I have heard Minnesota's interest. I also Pittsburgh likes to have him back too. So, but with Pittsburgh not having a GM, who knows what's going on there? So honestly, that's where I'm gonna go. But down to Tyler Bertuzzi, and this to me is an interesting name because he really did show himself to be something pretty special in the playoffs. And we knew that he could be, and now
he showed that he was effective. I don't think he was great.
I mean, at times he was one of the better Bruin players on the ice in that series against Florida.
Yeah, but what was the cold hard points that he put up? I'm going to look.
I think he had 6 or 7 points in 7 games, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, he was pretty.
He was one of their better, more effective forwards, and he was physical.
And he plays physical, and he does all these things. I mean, these are things that people really, if you get a point a game and you're a player like Tyler Bertuzzi, you're valuable. Or even
I'm not saying he's not valuable. He is valuable.
And Buffalo,
he had 10 points.
10 points, right? I mean, so Buffalo's a team that has some money, not a lot, but a little bit of money because they have to sign.
This is the thing. I agree with the sentiment that Buffalo would be interested. One, Bertuzzi is a veteran of the Atlantic Division, so he knows it well. Two, they're a team that does not have a ton of toughness and gets pushed around a lot.
Yeah.
So, a guy like Bertuzzi, a sort of crash and bang guy, to go along with Jordan Greenway, who they got in a trade from Minnesota, that's going in the direction where, those guys protect the Skinners and the Thompsons, and the Dahlins. They need those players. So I think that now the question here, Ak, is their priorities are Dahlin on a new deal and Owen Power on a new deal.
Right.
And they're not going to spend $5-6 million on a 5-year contract for Bertuzzi, and that's probably what he's looking for. So if he's a little more reasonable in terms of his term or in terms of the money, then I think Buffalo would be all in on it. But if it's long term and big money, then I don't think so.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm going to say I think the Sabres are out on him because I'm pretty sure based on everything Kevin said, he's looking for the most money he can get.
He's gonna look for money now. Colorado. I don't know what their cap situation is exactly.
Well, it's going to improve. They're going to have the money that they've lost with Landeskog gone.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they do need that kind of player as well. Like I really
do. So I could see them paying the price.
Yeah. Boston, they did like him a lot. Whether or not they can keep him or not depend on
the price
that happens. If for some reason Krejci and whatever are coming back, Krejci and Bergeron, but I think
they're only making $3 million total last year.
Yeah, they're not going to pay a lot for.
Right. Well, here's the question when it comes to Boston, because now I don't particularly believe these rumors because they don't make a ton of sense, and it would be sort of a paradigm shift with that organization. The name of McAvoy being traded has been out there, and that doesn't really add up because he's a really good defenseman. Yeah. He's young, but he is expensive. I think $9.5 million. So have they soured enough on him, or do
I think this is an invention of the media? I noticed that a few media people were kind of putting him in a trade. I don't believe the team feels that way.
To me, that just feels like a team that got upset in the first round. and you're going to hear that kind of rumor thrown
People
out
are
there.
right about that, and they're like, "Oh, look, McAvoy makes 9.5.
Right,
He doesn't score enough," and it's like, well, he does everything else that you could possibly want a defenseman to do.
But you're not. You can't lay it on. You can't lay that loss on McAvoy, and then you can't also sit there and say,
Lindholm was lousy.
Lindholm
was hurt. Lindholm was hurt.
Whatever, but he still was lousy. Everybody's.
I know. I'm just saying that's an excuse.
Jason Zucker is another kind of an interesting one. I think that's going to be we're going to talk a lot about this summer. He's an anomaly. What is he really? We don't really know 100%.
The funny thing, Nick, is just at the time that everybody was saying Pittsburgh should buy out the final year of his contract, he has a good year.
Yeah.
So then he hit it at the right time. The one team that you don't have on this list, and I don't know if they'll have the cap space. He's from Vegas.
Yeah, and that's
always been a connection.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard much. Vegas is a team that you usually don't hear much about until they're out of the playoffs. Yeah. So, I haven't heard anything about them really. I don't think they're anywhere else.
I can see it too.
Yeah, I can see. I know the Flyers have interest in him. I don't think that they're a favorite, but I know they have interest in him for sure. And I got to go, guys. I got to take this call. I'm sorry, guys. But
okay, I'll finish out on this draft thought.
That'd be great. Sorry about this, guys.
No problem.
Just listing JVR made me realize he's still playing.
He is still playing, yeah.
I'm kidding.
Okay, so the draft, what did you want to talk about, Russ?
So I wanted to talk about, I've noticed a few fan bases. I get a lot of emails. Every time I go on a show, or not emails, I get a lot of messages and such about the draft. And I'll only give up so much information for free, folks. That's just the way it is because I got to make a living. I hope you know that. Anyhow, one of the things is, and it's becoming a little bit alarming for me, that fan bases are kind of like, yeah, we understand about, let's say, Mitch Kopp, or yeah, we understand about this guy, but, he's going to take 4 to 5 years, and I think my team is going to want to have something quicker to the NHL, have something to show for it. And there's multiple teams that would fit that. And the best thing I could tell you is, if your team is doing it, they're doing it wrong. You don't go into the draft saying, who could I get to the NHL quickest? Because we've seen a lot of prospects get their growth stunted and never turn into the guy you think they were going to be. And that's because they got rushed to the league or something else, but a lot of times because they got rushed. Another thing is, you don't want to do that because you want to draft what you think is the best possible player. And then, hey, if that player fits your organization, that's even better. But you want the best possible player. You're going to the draft getting the best players. Now, you might start to go organizational needs after the second round. That's fine, because then you're just taking shots in the dark anyhow. But you really shouldn't go in the first round, and definitely not in the top 10, looking at organizational needs. That should go out the window. And if you're not doing it that way, I'm telling you, your team is doing it wrong. And so who's the best D-man? I still think it's Pellikka Sandin. Sandin Pellikka. Now my brain's not working. I think Sandin Pellikka is the best D-man. That's who I have ranked highest. You can go to sportsology.com and look at it. But the idea is, you don't go into these drafts saying, who in a year and a half, this guy could be in the NHL. That's what I'm going to get because he would fit here with this guy. And it's like, you don't do that. I mean, I'm going to give you the best example. Back in the day when the Rangers drafted Dylan McIlrath, I was right there. And I basically told people, you don't draft for toughness. And they looked at me, and I'm like, you don't draft for toughness because this guy's going to take 4 years to get there, 5 years to get there. How do you know how the league is going to be and who else is going to be there? And honestly, McIlrath never did really fit in, but also had some injuries too. But still, he never really fit in. You don't go for something that is going to be in the future. Now, if you want to get a really fast player because you say, hey, we need team speed and the league is getting faster, okay, I can live with that one because speed is never going to hurt you. But you also have to have the other things to go with the player. So in other words, if I'm drafting a guy for speed, that guy better match up against the guy who's maybe a little slower in every other column. Hockey IQ, scoring, passing, all of that. If he doesn't, I'm going to give up a little bit of that speed because we've seen guys with a lot of speed that can't finish. That's a whole other category. And, so that's all. I just want to say that you don't want your team to do that. If you're rooting for your team to do that, it's not the NFL, man.
Yeah, we'll discuss more draft stuff as we go. get closer to the draft. So great show. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For the departed Eklund, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.